Welcome back. We've been out on the trails today and it was fabulous conditions. Unfortunately, the trail was a little drier than we were hoping for. Last week it was really muddy and all our bikes were caked with mud. But today we only just have a little bit of mud on the bike, but we're still going to go through the cleaning process. So the first thing we do is we'll stick the bike in the stand. If you don't have a work stand at home available, you can always hook the seat over a tree or you can put on the bike rack on the back of your car, but it's really ideal to get the bike off the ground so we can turn the gears and spin the wheels and get the bike really clean. We have a Topeak work stand which are available from Bike Now, but as I say, you can use anything. These are very easy to use. It's good to drop the front wheel a little bit lower than the back wheel so the handlebar always stays straight. The first thing we're going to do to clean the bike is just give it a little bit of a wet and get rid of the bulk of the dirt. So now it's time to wet the bike, and we've chosen not to use a power washer. We're just going to use a normal hose. It's got a fair bit of pressure, but I want to be really careful not to spray upward in the bearings, downward into the seals, or I don't want to spray any grease or dirt from the chain into the disc. So we've got to be very careful about how we use water. So we'll just give it a light wet first. And that's been wet with a little bit more pressure. I'm just going to get the caked mud off areas where there's a little bit more mud. So now that we understand that we've got the big chunks of dirt gone, we can now start cleaning the bike. And where we should start is with the drivetrain. So if you're using a wet lubricant that goes all black and you want to clean that off because that's going to carry a lot of dirt from the trail, you can use different ideas. For example, you can use a little bit of paintbrush with a biodegreaser, or you can use a chain cleaning device. So this is a great brush set for getting all inside the frame, in different places to clean the bike. This is a chain cleaning brush, which is great for cleaning the chain if you're just putting a little bit of biodegreaser on the chain and you want to clean it by hand. And these are very popular, but if you fill them too full and the chain actually runs into the degreaser, it can wash all those really vital lubricants out of the chain, and then you never really make your chain good again. So you've got to make sure that the chain doesn't get buried into the liquid, and it's only really doing what a brush would do on the outside of the chain. And they're a great idea to clean a chain. Black dirty chains with grease is not good because it carries all the dirt. A way out of all of this is if you use a wax lubricant like this, then your chain will never be black and greasy, it will only have dirt on it. When we clean the drivetrain of the bike, if the drivetrain is really greasy, we've got to be really careful not to let any of the oils from the chain or the cassette move over into the discs. Today I'm going to use an Eco degreaser. I'm going to be very careful not to get any on the cassette. Anything that's atomized that sprays everywhere, you've got to be very careful it doesn't get onto the rotor. With a brush you can just clean the outside of the chain. We want to remove the grease and the dirt that's on the chain that's getting worn into the system. We don't have to clean inside the links. If you have heavy grease from the chain caked up in the drivetrain, you can use a screwdriver or a paddle pop stick or anything to get inside here and remove the excess gunk that builds up with dirt and grease. We can also do that on the cassette. After you've finished getting rid of the larger bits of grease with the dirt, you can do a little bit of flossing on your chain. The next step is I've taken a little bit of Finish Line Super Wash and put it into an atomizing bottle and diluted it. And we're just going to spray the bike after we've applied the superwash, and there's different varieties of this you can get. It's kind of like a truck wash, CT18, it has all different names, but the bike one we use because we're sure it's good with disc brakes. So it's a little bit safer to use proper bike products because bikes are very delicate with carbon and with different surfaces. You don't want anything corroding into the different types of materials, and we want to look after the bike. So it's really good not to use car products or just general cleaning products. It's better to use the proper bike products because we know they're safe. What we have to do now is we have to wait a few minutes for that to soak in, allow the chemicals to work to break down the mud. So our friends at A-Gas have given me a holder, so it's time to have a little drink. Cheers. I've got a little bucket of water and we're just going to run over and just help the chemical work underneath the seat. It's a great idea while brushing your bike not to use this on the chain if the chain's all black and greasy. I don't have to worry about it so much because we use wax lubricant once again, but if your chain's all black and greasy, even though you've cleaned it, you'll pick up oil in the brush and you'll spread it all over the frame. So be a little bit careful with what you're touching depending on what's greasy and how much you've cleaned it. It's a pretty cool day today and we don't have to worry about things drying, but if you do this in the heat of the day in direct sunlight, then everything's going to dry before you get to it. So it's probably a good idea to do it in cooler conditions, or you'll have to do bit by bit. We've still got to be very careful not to spray water into the seals. Every time you wash a bike, some water gets into the forks, some water gets into the bearings and through the fittings, and eventually, even though you can't see it, that will start to corrode inside the bike, and that's why we completely overhaul our bikes once a year and we service them regularly, because even though you can't see the dirt and can't see the wear, this might have a little bit of water in it. The seals are not perfect and the seal bearings are not perfect. So now that we've finished washing the bike, it's clean, but we need to wipe off a little bit of the excess water, and it's a good time to inspect your bike for any damage. So as you give it a little wipe off and see if there's no little dirty areas, I actually like doing this wipe off when the bike's almost dry. Otherwise you're just wiping off water, but when you see it's dry, you can see any dull patches or any of the chemicals left on the bike if you haven't hosed it off properly, or any little dirt patches. The most important thing we want to do is get rid of all the dirt with the grease off the bike, because that will continue wearing all the equipment. So it's not just about looking at the bike and seeing that it's clean, it's also about making sure the bike is going to last longer without mechanical problems. When you've finished wiping the bike over and inspecting for damage, it's good to use an alcohol solution on a cloth, and we're going to wipe the disc and make sure there's no contaminants on the disc. Bike disc brakes are really sensitive to chemicals. They'll squeal or they won't work, or the pads can get contaminated really easily. So you've really got to look after the disc and the brake pads. If any lubricant gets onto the disc and runs through the brake pads, it's a good chance the pads will have to be replaced. When you've finished wiping off any dirt that's on the bike and you're happy that it's really clean, it may be just a little bit dull. So there's bike polish, or there's Armour All, or there's silicone finish, or a Teflon spray. Some people use WD-40. You can even use Mr. Sheen. So we're not going to spray this anywhere near the brake pads, but if you just give a little bit on a cloth, and I like Mr. Sheen because it's waxy, and we just give the frame, it'll dry off a little bit, and then we can just give it a quick polish, and then you'll get that new showroom finish. And this is great if you're going to sell the bike, or you want to always look at your bike as being spotless, or show off to your friends how you keep your bike always nice and clean. It'll shine like new. Once we've finished taking a bit of time to wax or to finish the bike to make it shine, then it's going to look great, but the chain will rust pretty soon. We need to lubricate the chain because we've washed a lot of the oil off it. We have a bunch of different lubricants that we can use. I think that we should stay away from any atomized lubricant if you have a disc brake bike. Just manually apply the lubricant to the chain. This, if it gets into the disc or whatever, the brakes are not going to work. So you've got to be really, really careful if you're using a spray lubricant. The other choices we have is wet or dry, and wet would be really good if you want the best possible lubricant, but it's going to get dirty and dirt can get onto the chain, stick to the wet lubricant and then work through the drivetrain. So this is probably used more for wet weather road conditions where there's no dirt and you don't mind if the chain's dirty, but you need the best performance. Or you can go to a dry lubricant which doesn't attract dust. It dries on the chain, but it still has sort of that effect of not self-cleaning. And I use a wax lubricant, which has got to be shaken a lot, and after you shake it and apply it, it's like a candle wax. It dries on the chain, and then if the chain gets dirty, it flakes off with the dirt. So we're going to go with wax. So once again, we're just going to do, as per our previous videos, we do one run on each side and then one run through the middle. We'll let the oil and the lubricant run through the chain a bit and we'll clean off the excess. Okay, so we're all done. The bike is clean, we've polished it, we've lubricated, it's ready, but we don't like a clean bike, we like a dirty bike, and we're going to go straight back out tomorrow and get it dirty again.